The healthy partner that's meant for you will love you the way that you love yourself. If you don't love yourself as a sixth sensory and you're waiting for someone else to do that for you, then you're going to continually manifest people who are not good for you. The way that you love yourself is by setting the standards by which people are going to treat you. That means if you have a boundary that you leave an interaction when it's time for you to go to bed and get a good night's sleep, then you leave that interaction and you don't stay up late having conversations that are frivolous. You don't sacrifice your sleep for that. And so the five sensory has to learn to live within those boundaries, within those guidelines that you give them. If a five sensory likes to play video games, they may not be a good match for you as a sixth sensory because you really value your sleep. I mean, it depends on the patterns of play that they have, but if they're being loud and belligerent late into the night, then they're not going to be a good fit for you as a sixth sensory. And in the same way, a partner that's addicted to drugs and alcohol are going to surround you with substances as a sixth sensory, and you're constantly going to have to be able to deal with them throwing up or not being able to drive, or they may be staying home sick from their workplace. And so that responsibility becomes yours as a sixth sensory. And if you've got so many important priorities and you've got such a busy life that you can't spend time babysitting a potentially alcoholic five sensory or someone who's overdosed on marijuana, then you've gotta not let these people into your life. You gotta love yourself enough to say, this is not up to my standard. This habit doesn't work for me and you're not compatible. At best, maybe we can be friends, but we can't be intimate. So your standards as a sixth sensory have to be determined by A, your physical health, and then B, your mental health. If they're disrespecting you in any way, that is a big red flag that you need to give them the heave ho. Schedules can also be a really important factor as to whether or not you will work out with a five sensory. If one of you works during the day and the other works during the night, that might be difficult to reconcile. You might not be a good match because one or the other will be sleep deprived or just waking up when you're spending time with the other. And negative states, by the way, get anchored on people that you constantly spend time with. So if you're constantly sleep deprived and exhausted and you keep seeing your partner, you will associate sleep deprivation with your partner, and you may subtly start blaming your partner when really they had nothing to do with that. As a sixth sensory, you need to have awareness of what your needs are, and then you have to find a five sensory that's going to match. You don't even have to explain what your needs are to the five sensory. You can keep them private and just observe their behavior as you're dating them and getting to know them to evaluate whether or not that they're a good fit for you. And only when they're a good fit for you and they've given you an offer of a serious relationship that you can put some faith into them as a potential partner. What we can't do as sixth sensories is be so naive that when we lose our sleep and we don't eat properly and we're overworked and grouchy, that we expect the five sensory to meet our needs or make it better in any kind of way. They cannot make it better because often five sensories can't even take care of themselves. So why would we expect them to make any of our problems better? We have to meet our own needs ourselves and solve our own problems, not go to the five sensories in order to get our problems solved. Some of the greatest forms of self-love for a sixth sensory aren't necessarily things like giving yourself a bubble bath or feeding yourself a chocolate bar. The greatest forms of self-love are doing things like cooking whole food naturally at an inexpensive price and really nourishing our bodies with the best quality of food we can afford. It's things like having the time in order to sleep properly without necessarily being awakened by an alarm clock if we don't need one. It's giving ourselves time in nature to breathe deeply and really relax and to let go of the stress of the world that we've been carrying on our shoulders. It's time to read our books that we love so much and make notes in the margins. It's time for us to go to events that are really meaningful to us, even if the five sensory has no idea what we're participating in. But it feeds our spirit, and that's enough for us. We don't need their validation or approval. We just need to take care of our own selves. This is self-love. This is what we need to do as six sensories. Even before we attend to our businesses or contribute to society, if we're operating on a full cup, that's when we're able to give and be our best selves in society. Think about the haggard, worn out person who's going to volunteer. Do you really want to work with them? No, because they're so exhausted, they just need their sleep, that you just wish them well and hope that they get a good night's sleep. And I've been there. Sometimes as a sixth sensory, when you're in the process of building a business, you could be working multiple jobs, you could be volunteering, you could be writing, you could be sacrificing sleep, working during the day and then working during the night because of all of the expenses you need to take on in order to sustain a business. And in those times, we have to take extra careful care of ourselves. Doesn't mean we can't sacrifice a bit of time and energy for a project that is really important to us, but that can't be our lifestyle. That can't be the standard that goes on day and night every single day of the year, because at some point we're gonna break, and we should never get into a relationship with the five sensory who expects that kind of lifestyle from us. Self-love is not working yourself to death as a sixth sensory and abstaining from alcohol to be a good influence while your five sensory partner is running around to all the bars getting drunk every single night and expecting you to pick them up. The bottom line is be discerning. Don't jump into relationships that are not good for you. Love yourself and care for yourself first, and then the right person is going to be magnetized to that self-love and self-care.